What is worth doing when arranging an apartment and what isn't talked about enough? Feel free to use furniture from your previous apartment. Interiors arranged from A to Z, from scratch to a wow effect, probably have a better chance of making it to the cover of an interior design magazine, but is that really what matters most to us when creating our own living space? Furnishing your place is a big expense, so why make it even harder on yourself by replacing absolutely everything at once? Since we already have functional furniture, let's use it, and we can replace it with our dream pieces later on. And this matters not only in terms of financial optimization, but maybe even more importantly, it helps us get a feel for the space, live in it for a while, and see how we actually use it. Because it might turn out that in practice, we use the space a bit differently than we initially thought, and the furniture we originally planned might not actually be the best choice. By testing things out in practice and living in a place for a while, we can choose furniture that fits much better. That's why you shouldn't buy everything at once. An empty corner, empty shelves in the built-ins. At first, this is often seen as a kind of failure, like we're arranging our place, arranging it, and it's still not fully arranged. But this is definitely not a failure. It's just a natural part of life. Filling up the space quickly can come back to haunt us later. First, things bought in a hurry aren't necessarily the ones that truly capture our hearts. And second, in a year, 2, 3, or even 5, we'll still want to keep working on our living space. We can still come across a poster that totally delights us and we'll want to hang it in our home. And if there are no empty walls, it won't necessarily be that simple. In moments like these, you'll appreciate that the empty wall was waiting for this moment. Maybe in a few years, you'll find your dream dresser by the dumpster. Wait with a smile for what the future will bring, and don't worry that your apartment doesn't look like it's been lived in for generations. But if you're missing coziness and that's why you want to fill every empty space, get inspired by the work of home stagers, who can create a warm, homey atmosphere even in empty, uninhabited apartments. Home stagers prepare interiors for sale or rent, so they often deal with empty properties, yet they can still create a truly cozy atmosphere in them. That's why it's worth taking a look at the tricks they use and applying them in your own space. You don't have to buy all the furniture right away or hang pictures on every wall. Sometimes really small changes can make a big difference. Sometimes just adding curtains is enough for the room to have different acoustics and simply feel nicer. And it's worth postponing the more serious decisions about filling our space. Make decisions about the concept as early as possible. Just as I encouraged you a moment ago to simply accept those empty corners or empty walls and not rush to fill them, when it comes to the concept of the interior, definitely don't leave that until the last minute. You can choose a nightstand or a lamp model even 10 years after moving into a given space, and there's absolutely no problem with that. Failing to plan the interior concept before renovation can lead to several, even costly problems. There are situations when the crew is already starting to renovate the apartment and the client still doesn't know where they actually want the walls to be. Similarly, it's not uncommon to see a situation where, after the painting is finished, the client asks to move an outlet on the wall or add a new one, which means breaking into the wall, patching up the holes, smoothing it out and repainting, so you can imagine how much this extends the work over time. Very often, solutions that are done by eye ultimately don't work out in practice. We might think it doesn't matter if that niche is a little bigger or a little smaller, and we tell the crew, okay, yes, that wall can stay like that, and then it turns out we're missing 3 centimeters for the ready-made wardrobe we want to buy to fit perfectly into that niche. Why create such problems for yourself? It's better to check everything in advance. That's why you should definitely first think about what you want to have where, what dimensions are needed in each room, in each niche, so that everything fits well, and where the outlets should be, so that no furniture will block them later, and so that you also have the option to rearrange your furniture in the future and still have access to those outlets. And only then calmly think about which poster to put in which room and which nightstand to choose for that bed. Don't think about your apartment in terms of its investment value. Of course, it's not about going crazy with spending, buying everything that comes to mind, and then in a few years having a problem because we spent 5 times more on furnishings than the property itself was worth, and now, if we ever sell, we'll be at least halfway in the red on that money. No, that's not the point. The point is, within a reasonable budget, you don't necessarily have to choose solutions that seem universal and good just for resale. After all, we plan to live there and will probably stay for a few years, and sometimes life surprises us and we end up staying much longer in temporary places. Contrary to appearances, it's not just neutral, unremarkable, or even bland interiors that sell well. I know interior designers who, wanting to express themselves creatively, bought an apartment as an investment, renovated it with unusual concepts, and then sold it. Maybe it didn't sell in a week, but it definitely sold within a few weeks or a few months. Because people like different interiors, and now you can also notice that even in the home staging industry, the style of preparing properties is changing a bit. People are reaching for colors more often, and just a few years ago, everyone said to paint everything white because it's neutral. It makes the space look bigger, and it's easier for buyers to imagine themselves living there. And white is still often a good choice. If there are some bright colors on the walls, it's probably better to repaint them in a neutral white, but that doesn't mean we have to live with white walls for several years. So, when it comes to ergonomics, it's probably not worth going crazy with big oddities like a sink at knee height or doors that are only 40 cm wide. In terms of the ergonomics of the space, it's better to go for more universal solutions. But when it comes to style, decoration, and color scheme, you should definitely live your own way. And in the case of apartments in big cities, property prices are high enough that adjusting the interior style when selling
won't be
that noticeable. So remember, don't give up on your own needs or your own preferences. Unusual interiors also find their newcomers, except that it's not perfect. Of course, it's better to catch and fix some issues during the renovation stage. It's not about accepting shoddy work or flaws, but more about things related to everyday use. When a freshly painted wall gets dirty or a new floor gets scratched, it usually hurts a lot, and we take it really hard. But the truth is, in a few years, those walls will be even dirtier and there will be more scratches on that floor. That's just the natural order of things, and it's hard to avoid. So since it's going to happen anyway, and it shows that life is happening inside, which is beautiful, there's no point in stressing about it. Leave room for mess and changes in the future. It's often said that you should adjust your storage at home to fit the things you have, to check how many clothes you own, what things you keep in the kitchen, and prepare your built-ins accordingly. And of course, these are fantastic tips that I also share with you, but remember that life in the future can change. You might have different needs, a new job that will require some extra clothes, or suddenly you might become fascinated with making cakes and want to have more things for decorating them. It's hard to predict what will happen, and it's also hard to assume that we will stay the same our whole lives. That's why, as long as we have the space for it, it's worth planning some extra storage space that we don't intend to use just yet. That doesn't mean we have to make furniture that we don't need right now. That's not the point, but we can consider in our concept that, for example, In the future, instead of this decorative wooden shelf above the countertop in the kitchen, we can hang wall cabinets that will have different fronts than the ones below, bought later, but they will still be consistent with our concept for this space. However, organized storage is one thing, and having a place for everyday mess is another. And very often in many homes, for example, there are chairs in the bedroom or bathroom where you put things that aren't ready for laundry yet. And we usually don't think about such spaces when organizing our interiors. Is it worth it? Maybe it's worth considering a space specifically for this kind of chaotic everyday functioning. Let me know in the comments what else you think is worth paying attention to, what should be thought through in advance, and what can be left for later. I'm curious about your experiences. Don't forget our store. Recently we've added a lot of new titles, some of them really fascinating, so be sure to check them out. I'm saying goodbye. Remember to subscribe and see you next episode. Bye.